G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Off, the most oppressed and suppressed channel on the internet right now. The truth hurts and the liberal establishment hates the truth. Now they also hate Donald Trump, and they hate Donald Trump way more than me, way more than any of you. Right now he's public enemy number one, and the liberal establishment is out to use the Ukraine war to undermine President Trump and the Republicans in midterms so they can get their way and have a Congress more willing to give Europe billions of dollars for their war and obviously send you to war so that they can have their little victory parades and their little pin the little medals on their chest and tell you how they fought the great war against the evil Russians, when in fact it was you who did it all along. Just like World War II, where they have all these parades and the French and the Germans and the English stand around pretending that they won World War II. Oh yes, and they vote the Canadians. We all know that it was the Europeans dropped the ball and should never have gone to war. And Americans should have never bailed them out, right? But of course they didn't want the Soviet Union to end up dominating Europe. But of course, had Roosevelt not conspired with the Soviets in the first place, and of course that's what they're accusing Trump of doing, right? Conspiring with Putin. Ironically, that is exactly what the liberal establishment did to start World War II and World War I, right? So obviously they think, well, we didn't do this. Obviously we're being conspired. But the reality is, right, politicians don't do the right thing. They manipulate you all the time. Right, that's why Donald Trump was elected, because he wasn't a politician. But you haven't elected enough non-politicians yet. You keep bloody electing lawyers, right? The last people you need to elect, right? You're a lawyer? No, I'm not voting for you. Anybody but a lawyer should be the go, right? Lawyers and real estate, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? Who else has time on their hands? That's the problem, isn't it? They deliberately keeping you down in order to elevate themselves. The liberal establishment is corruption, and long overdue. People are taking a stand, but it's long overdue, right? Millions still tune into propaganda. They don't want the truth about the war, right? The truth is, right, Ukraine is getting hammered every day, but the Russians aren't doing enough to destroy them, right? They're not trying to destroy Ukraine. They're trying to pressure Ukraine. There is a difference, right? Now, also, Russia doesn't want to build Ukraine. And, yeah, the problem is like, when America would have just wiped most of Ukraine off the map in 90 days. Massive air campaign, dominate them, right? Once their air defenses are out, dominate them, and it's game over, right? Although that didn't work in Afghanistan, but then again, you didn't really use that enough air power in Afghanistan, and you really didn't use, as Trump said, most of and a lot of people don't want to admit it, right? They didn't fight the Taliban. They just sat there. They engaged, but they didn't fight them. There's a difference, right? And I'm not blaming the soldiers, it's the politicians, right? They didn't deploy the soldiers adequately. The Afghans never held ground. The Afghans never cleared out the Taliban. There's a whole list of excuses. But those are legitimate explanations as well, right? But Ukraine is going to be full of excuses and legitimate explanations. Now, one of them is going to be that Russia took too long, right? When Russians going to analyze this war for years to come, right, and adjust their strategies accordingly, right? One of their problems is they took too long, right? They should have at least some idea going ahead what they plan to do with the civilians, how to deal with unexploded ordnance, how to prioritize their flanks more, instead of individual targets. There should be concerned with larger territories. So it's not just the cities you want to capture, you want to hold the territories so that you just can't be flanked. And have a forward defense so that if you do take a city and immediately hit with a counter-offensive, you actually have additional lines of defense, right? But because they spread out too thin in Ukraine and didn't use their numerical advantage, which they haven't, right? Right? There are 670,000 Russians and there's 600,000 Ukrainians and 200,000 mercenaries, plus the on the Russian side, they have the 50,000 North Koreans assisting their border guards, but that's about it, right? The Russians are outnumbered, and yet they're winning, right? This has NATO panicking. This is the panic, right? They don't want a Russian victory because it means the NATO is useless, right? It means that Mark Rutte, well, you should blame Mark Rutte, but he's going to take the blame, and, Ursula always lying, and all these, someone has to be fired. And, of course, the people at the top are going to find the lowest on the totem pole and crush him. That's how it goes. The people who just come into the Liberal establishment, again, as the boomers die out, the 60, Ursula von der Leyen is 66. I mean, she should have been retired. This is the problem. Politics is retirement, is welfare for the corrupt, right? It's retirement for the perpetually corrupt lawyers. Right? Lawyers don't serve justice, they serve paychecks. Now, Russia is going for the southern flanks of Lyman, but they are stalled in most of the most places. They are stalled. They are still fighting and trying to clear out Ukrainians from the territories they've captured. They're still dealing with lots of unexploded ordnance and minefields. Plus, every time they advance, they set about digging in again. Digging in loses momentum, right? The Americans didn't storm across the desert by digging in every day, every second day, or, But this is, shall we say, a delicate operation, because Russia does not want to trigger a wider European war. I mean, he does, and you never know with the Liberal establishment, right? Nobody thought France would declare war on Germany, not once but twice. And you think at least after the first debacle, they would learn to get the British and Americans on board first, and not wait for the panic and destruction. Now, French politicians, fortunately in World War II, they did pay the price for their stupidity. Most of them were killed, either before or after the war. Either revenge from both sides. I mean, this is the problem. France never learns its lessons. The arrogance, right? Arrogance does not seem to be beaten out of the Liberal establishment, right? For decades, right? For decades, they've suffered losses, but never paid the price. Now, there's only a little bit of land fallen to the Russians here and there. And again, don't mistake the Russians' slow advancement for weakness. Well, Ukraine does. They keep provoking Russia into a wider war. Russia's absorbing the damage done to their economy. They knew this would happen. They have adequately and subsequently retaliated in Ukraine. Right? The Ukrainian oil and gas facilities have been hit for the 27th time in a row, and they're crying about it. But as rightly pointed out, you broke the agreement, right? Putin promised Trump he would not attack gas and oil, right? As soon as February came, when the deadline was hit, Ukraine hit the power station in Kursk, and then Belgrade, and then Russia retaliated, and Zelensky says, look, the Russians broke the agreement. He does that every time, right? Zelensky's a political animal, and the liberal establishment hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, right? They are the three dumbasses of politics, right? They gaslight, there's clear rules, right? And this self-centered muppet got kicked out of the Winter Olympics. Too bad, so sad, right? Now, despite the fact that Russia launched a barrage of missiles and drones at Ukraine says, they're not interested in stopping the war, even though Ukraine just bought just another round of military aid, Russian forces. It's not a big attack, right? It's bigger than some, but it's not as big as attack as others. Others have been as much as 700, right? So, but again, there's been attacks on Russian power stations, right? And Ukraine says, but that was a legitimate military target. Now, Ukraine just wants to make a big deal about everything. They always, right? They have to report every big deal, every minor detail other than the actual war, right? Oh, we captured 2 foreigners fighting for Russia. Big deal. So what? Right? Don't give a fuck, right? But they know that the pearl clutchers out there will punch their claws. They go, look, that must be Russians, and we go tell you. And this, right? Norway is buying a large volume of bombs to send to Ukraine. So, again, who's not interested in peace? Germany wants to deliver more air defences. Who's not interested in... air defences? Air defences I would accept as legitimate, right? Anything other than defences, right? Glide bombs are not defensive, right? But missile systems? Yeah. Air defense? Okay. But again, to protect Russia, to protect us, they wouldn't need protection if you didn't go around blowing up pipelines and sabotaging the Russian economy every other day. But no, it's all part of the game, old chap. Then say it out loud on TV every day. Go on TV and says, this is all part of our strategy to destroy Russia so that Britain can be great again. And most of the British will say, fuck off, you wanker. Right? It's war profiteering. Put that man on, if the establishment told the truth, they would be on trial for war crimes. But they won't. Oh, Estonia wants to buy 12 more howitzers. Why? Because they're going to deliver to Ukraine. If they report it, it's going to Ukraine. Like everything else. But yet Ukraine is exporting weapons. So they're war profiteers, right? There is no comeback, right? There's not enough of you out there watching. There's not enough of you sharing the videos. There's not enough likes. There is not enough popularity to end this, right? Most people, even the new Atlas, people who watch it, they're just there going, oh yes, yeah, okay, yeah, NATO bad, okay. And that's it, like, wow. You're not achieving, there's no momentum, right? The momentum, right? The apathy is pathetic, right? People think, if I don't take part, it won't happen. No, that's how you get, right? Republicans who stay at home let Democrats rule. That's always been, right? If you don't oppose them, they win. I know people are sick and tired of fighting Democrats. Right? Most people think politics is, oh, the election's over, now I can go back to normal. Democrats have no normal anymore. Right? Their normal is to steal, to rape, to pillage, to constantly harass, to dox and bully. They've turned social media toxic just so that nobody else will use it. Look at the rules of Twitter. Remember all these rules, right? You think Jack Dorsey's a libertarian? Yeah, libertarian, liberal light. Fuck him, you know, he's a grifter. Just like so many others, right? Now, things are heating up and the Gerald Ford has just allegedly left the Caribbean and is going to be steaming to the Middle East, according to the New York Times. So, yesterday, as you know, Trump did announce a reduction in sea operations and an increase in land operations. Now, I don't know why the Gerald Ford would cease land operations. If the Middle East is, if he's headed to the Middle East, why does the Nimitz need backup? The Nimitz has more than enough firepower. It's got more aircraft than more operational aircraft. Perhaps the Russians have delivered more weapons to, or the Chinese have delivered more weapons to Iran. And yes, we don't know all the information behind the scenes right now. But according to the establishment, Trump is abandoning Ukraine. This is, of course, a lie. This is always, they always do this, right? Now, of course, as Americans know, only a third of the Senate is up for re-election, but all of the House, right, is up for re-election. The Democrats who oppose Trump hope to regain the control of the Congress, because that's the war power, isn't it? Right? The Republicans do not only have slim margins, and this is because people go, no, I don't want one person to have all the power. Yet, no matter what happens, if the Republicans don't, no matter what happens, the Liberals keep getting their way because they bully, right? This is the problem with a fragmented system, right? The fragments that are controlled by the Democrats do what they want anyway. And the establishment is entrenched. They can't be fired. This is, right? As soon as Trump does anything they don't want, they riot, they loot, they pillage, and don't suffer the consequences. Politically, people keep forgetting. It's getting frustrating that people won't remember all the riots, all the murders by BLM and others. They just keep forgetting, right? You forget about the decades of terrorism. You forget everything for your own comfort, for your own ignorance. And it's getting frustrating that people won't, right? We know Liberals will never address anything, whether it's the terrorism by Islam or the Marxists or the millions killed by the left. No. It's always, oh, that wasn't real communism. It's getting frustrating trying to awaken people to reality, right? But reality is, right, there's only two ways, right, to get this war to end. Marco Rubio has planned to discuss with Hungary and Slovakia to halt their imports of Russian energy, right? Now, this is selfishly motivated, right? This is to benefit Chevron and Mobil in Alaska and Venezuela and basically the Americas in as a whole, and it's also going to benefit the Nordic gas makers, right? Who wanted to replace the Nord Stream with their own pipeline, but remember their gas was dearer than the Russians, right? Remember that war is always about the economy, right? It's a looting match, right? They always try to find a justification for war, And this is not a Republican thing, right? This is what the governments do, often forced into, right? Marco Rubio didn't inherit this war. He didn't start this war. This was Barack Obama's war. But the liberal establishment will never accept, right? But the only levers America has to end this war is to threaten the Russian economy, right? Other sanctions haven't worked. So they have to start sanctioning the countries that deal with Russia. Now, it's going to be hard, but it's a necessary action, right? But this is not entirely Putin's fault. Putin has time and time again warned Ukraine to stop killing ethnic Russians, but because Europe won't stand up to Ukraine, Europe is again worshipping the ground Ukrainians walk on, right? Obviously, they want something off Ukraine. Otherwise, they wouldn't give a fuck about Ukraine. They never gave a fuck about Ukraine until Barack Obama told them to. And that's the only reason why they give a fuck. Their God Emperor Obama told them to care about Ukraine. And they do, like loyal, brainwashed muppets. But France, of course, has ruled out peace. And the Russians have said, well, we don't, right, this is EU summit in Belgium about peace, and yet the peace summit doesn't include Russia. But of course, it's all about ending the Ukraine war, but seeing that Ukraine gets everything that it needs. So, like, it's just another waste of public money and an opportunity for Macron to escape the troubles of France to try and save his failing career. Because France has turned into a third world country, and Macron, well, he doesn't want to end up like all the other French prime ministers or presidents who have become nobodies and nothings the moment they're out of office. And of course, having jailed a political opposition, he's now worried they're going to jail him. Well, he should be jailed. Just do it, okay? If it wasn't for the if it wasn't for the stupid French politics, there would have been again, it's EU, right? France is going to collapse under the weight of its own bureaucracy and stupidity, right? Like it did in under Louis and under Napoleon. But it didn't collapse straight away. It was a slow death. You know, by the time Louis XIV, France was long in debt. He inherited debt. There was no way out of that debt because no matter what they did, the banks would not accept and just keep raising the interest rates, right? It was always unobtainable, right? Every trade deal was blocked by France, or they'd be hit with taxes. It's ridiculous, right? The world is undermining the world, right? Everybody's undermining everybody else for just a day's advantage, right? It's not a free market, right? But Zelensky keeps talking about elections. Now, many commentators have said this, right? But this is the main one here, right? This is the earliest, RT. Some of the, I forget his name, but he's a Turk. He works for RT, and he's pointed out time and time again, right? Zelensky has dangled elections in front of the Ukrainian people to end this war. But every few weeks he dangles an election, and as soon as the Western media cheers him on, he then finds a reason, and he keeps saying, oh, Russia's not interested in peace, or then he goes out and buys more weapons. It's because it's narrative management, right? It's a public exercise, right? That he keeps telling people, oh, yes, we're having a referendum for a peace deal with Russia, but then he says, oh, Russia's not interested in peace because they won't sign our peace deal, right? Remember, it has to be the appropriate security guarantees, right? It has to be our peace deal, right? And it's getting to the point where it's Russian interference. This excuse every time, isn't it? But US wants Ukraine to end the conflict by summer. He thinks it's But this is his escape plan, right? He's going to blame America for not giving them the adequate security, that they won't give us adequate as resources, that they didn't, but their tanks didn't perform. Their foreign weapons were useless. They did, they weren't, 31 tanks. You were not given weapons to fight a prolonged war. You're given enough weapons to hold the line and make a peace deal. That has been made quite clear by everybody but the media establishment. But because my voice does not echo across the internet, because people want war, not peace, right? And I think a lot of people on the right want war, but they won't speak up. They want to prove their chops. They want to prove their bravado. Go speak to a vet, okay? I don't think many vets are going to tell you that, it's the best time of my life. Getting shot at every day, getting wounded, getting my legs blown off. Yeah, fucking fantastic, man. Go ask all the veterans who are on the edge of suicide and in pain constantly what a great time war is, right? Go work in a vet's hospital. That'll really kick the war out of you. Now, US is accused of not doing enough to end the war. And, of course, they are working to end the war. Marco Rubio wants this war to end, but you have the entire European establishment, which, when you're so divided, when you have too many voices in the room, right? They used to have a saying, right? Too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Well, it's the same thing today. Too many managers, not enough workers, right? Too many want to wear the crown, but none of them want to take the responsibility or do the work it takes, right? Heavy is the crown for a reason, right? You have to be able to take responsibility. Keir Starmer, not a chance. Macron, never. Merkel, Hollande, they're going to just walk away with their retirement, having caused yet another great tragedy simply for their own benefit. All right? They got their, the war profiteers in Davos, Switzerland is probably, yet again, the, instigator financially of war, right? Having profited from World War One, World War Two, they're not going to change, right? The establishment there will never accept. They'll defend to the death their right to be assholes and war profiteers. But we should isolate them, right? We have the means to isolate the criminals and just let them die out, right? But America, of course, you can't be the world police. Why not? Someone has to, right? India, contain them all, right? Right? You step out a port pass. Passports used to only be, right? You went to the port. That's it, right? There's a port pass, right? You entered a port. You flew in. You flew into, say you took a flight to Beijing or Washington or anywhere in the world. You weren't given free rein. This whole modern concept of travel and free movement, that's all Marxist bullshit, right? We got to purge the culture of Marxism, and you'll see the world become a nicer place when Indians are confined to India. It's your homeland. You kicked everybody else out, so why shouldn't we kick you out? Same with Pakistan. Same with Bangladesh. Same with all these African countries. Resettle all the refugees in Africa, right? But no. Why not? You have all the land, you have all the resources, you keep telling us how you want Africans to return to Africa. They don't really mean it. Of course they want all the, cut off all the banks, any banks, cut off all the remittance companies. You'll soon make the world a nicer place when you make, because good fences make good neighbours, folks. Right? All these end colonizers, okay, You can go live in Africa now. See how how far that gets you. Because there are hardly any white people in Africa, and almost none in any political office. You got more Pakistanis in political office. You got no Englishmen in Pakistan, but you've had an Indian Prime Minister. So don't tell me India's not a colonizer. You're bleeding cope, right? All these gutless old fools need to be swept out of power, forced to retire, take all their assets and say, right, here's your retirement home, and we're selling all your assets, we're taking all your pension funds, all your shares, pay all the debt down, and then scrap the rest, close the banks, stop all this massive spending, and you watch, right? Boomers, right? The boomers keep lecturing us on getting a job, cutting your hair, getting a job and paying our own bills. Yeah, here they are. None of them cut their hair, none of them have a job, and none of them pay their own bills. And I'm sorry if this video ain't going to get a lot of views, because YouTube ain't going to recommend me, because they do not. You wonder what happens with videos, why they're not recommended? It's because you don't press enough. Enough people have told me it's the like button, okay? It's all I got to care about, not how many people. I know I need a certain amount of subscribers to unlock features. The more subscribers I get does increase the amount of recommendations. Same with views, but the major index now apparently is likes, right? If your channel isn't likable, they will push it down the index, trying to push you off the platform passively, right? YouTube is a passive-aggressive high school bullying contest, right? It's a popularity contest, and if you, it's almost guaranteed, right, that if enough people like this video, that it'll get recommended to more people. It's a simple experiment, right? But people, it costs you nothing to like a video. Now, I do ask for your support, but as always, I appreciate you regardless. See you in the next video, and bye for now.